Yesterday we have seen how to write syntax directed translation means control flow for different types of constructs like if statement, case statements, then while loop, do while loop, for loop, while in for, like this. We have seen the grammar and the side effects or syntax which affects usability. Example was semicolon. Semicolon is used as a separator to separate out two statements, but sometimes it is also used as a terminator. It may terminate the loop and you won't get the expected result. So some of the errors may occur if semicolon terminates statements instead of separating the statement. So this is the language syntax, but sometimes it affects usability. We have seen a small grammar like yes goes to empty statement, block, that is opening bracket, statement list and closing bracket, if expression statement, if expression statement, else statement and while statement. And statement can be statement list, comma, semicolon, statement. And then we have checked for this grammar using bottom up, top down parsing. I asked you to check for all these grammars whether these statements are syntactically correct as per this grammar or not. When a sentence is given to you and grammar is given to you, and you have to prove that this sentence satisfies the grammar or this sentence is syntactically correct using either top down or bottom up parsing, it is called as derivation. You are deriving that statement from the grammar. It is called parsing or syntax analysis. Now let's move ahead with handling special cases in loops. Now before starting with the loops, we have said that it has single entry and single exit, right? Somewhere here we talked about structured statements are by definition single entry and single exit. You can enter into the loop and you can either leave go with this path or this path if the condition is true or false, but at the end there is a join statement and you can proceed ahead. So even in function you have single entry and single exit, but sometimes there are some special cases or some languages support some special statements like break and continue, which will break the loop or which will give another exit from that particular loop or block. So break statement sends control out of enclosing loop to the statement following the loop. Have you familiar with break and continue statement? We use this statement in C language or Java.
Yes,
Break.
ma'am.
Yes, okay. There are two more statements like return and go to. From anywhere from your function you can return. For example, in case of factorial, if user entered n is equal to 0, then factorial is 0 and you will return. If user entered 1, factorial is 1 and you will return. So that return statement is also exit from that particular function, return statement. And go to statement, C language has a go to statement, but it is not a good idea to use go to. From a loop or from anywhere you can just write a label and go to that particular label. That go to can be a conditional jump or unconditional jump. Without any condition, without checking any condition, you can write to enter into the loop. So there are these four statements which are known as special cases in loops: break, continue, return, and go to. Break statement sends control out of the enclosing loop to the statement following the loop. So we have, suppose this is my loop statement and I have written break here, it will come outside the loop, out of that particular loop. And continue statement will skip rest of the statements followed by continue, and it will skip that particular increment statement and then go ahead. It will repeat the enclosing loop by sending control to the beginning of the loop. So if I'll give you one example. Now we have to write a program to find out sum of 10 numbers. If user enters negative number, we have to terminate the loop. So we have created, we use three variables, I, number and sum. Number is to accept number from user. Sum, we want sum of 10 numbers, and I is for a loop index. So for I is equal to 1, I less than equal to 10, I plus plus. we are printing n1, n2, n3, whatever the number is, we accept that number from the user. And if that number is less than 0, we want to terminate, so break. And if the number is positive, it is not less than 0, so we'll add that number into the sum. And when you come out, it will print sum. So this program will run when you enter all 10 positive numbers. If you enter any negative number in between, the loop will terminate. So there are two terminating conditions. One, when I becomes 11, that is greater than 10, and second, when you enter negative numbers. So this is also a terminating condition of the loop. So there are two different exit from this loop. Let's check how it works. Code is visible.
Yes, ma'am, it is visible.
So here I am giving some values 10, 20, 30, and say -3. That's printing result of these three numbers, addition of these three numbers. That is 60. If I run it again, now I am giving all positive values. It will take 0 also. So it's taking 10 values and then printing this sum. This is the job of break. Break this loop and come out of this loop. Next statement is continue statement. The same program, if the user enters negative, it is not added to the result, but you will continue it. So you want to skip that step. Again, the variables are same, I, number, and sum. You ask user to enter a number. If number is less than 0, continue. Continue means it will not come to this line. The control will go back to for loop. Just a minute. It will be easier to look at the Python visualizer. It will show you how program executes. This is with the break statement. So it has defined these three variables, I, number, and sum. Sum is initialized to 0. Currently value of I is 1. Number is accepted here. User will Oh, Python visualizer is not accepting the numbers. Okay. We'll continue with GDB. So here, instead of break, if I use continue, if number is less than 0, it will continue. So loop will continue from the beginning. Means whatever the value of I will get incremented and loop will start. I'll again give tail number 10, 20 and 30 and then minus 3. In previous example, it was come out because negative, when you enter negative number, the statement was break. Now it is continue. So it will take next 5 numbers. It will skip this and add rest of the numbers and it will print the result. So program is not important. What is the important thing here is how continue works and how break works. You may have to use continue and break in your program whenever it is needed. So these are called as special cases. You can have different exit from a loop without terminating the condition with the help of break, and you can skip some steps with the help of continue. No need to explain about written and go to statement. Programming with invariants. Constructed program is defined as single entry, single exit that we have seen. So preconditions and post conditions attach just before and after the statements, and these are called assertions. So with whatever the value of x before entering into the loop, if value of x is less than 0, then it will not enter. If it is greater than 0, then you want it should enter into the loop. So when the you are in while loop, x value should be always greater than 0. If your condition is while x greater than 0, that is called precondition. So before entering into the loop and when you come out of the loop, whatever the value of particular variable. So for example, just look at these bold statements. While x is greater than equal to y, do x is equal to x minus y. These are called preconditions, invariant, and post conditions. Preconditions means what should be the value of x and y before entering into the loop. What are the values of x and y while they are in the loop. And when you come out of the loop, what should be the value of x and y. These are called post conditions. So if this condition is while x greater than equal to y. So in this case, x should be greater than equal to y, then only you will enter into the loop. So we assume that value of x is 0, greater than equal to 0, and y should be greater than equal to, greater than 0. That is our precondition. And when you are in a loop, you know that value of x is always greater than equal to y. So if value of y is greater than 0, then x should be greater than equal to y. So this condition is imposed on x when you are in a loop. And when you are out of the loop, x is equal to x minus y, and when you come out of the loop, still this condition should be there. X is greater than equal to 0 and y is greater than 0. That is a post condition. So why we need these conditions? We can write a loop and just continue with our logic. We never care about what is the value of precondition, post condition, invariant, etc. But when you are looking at your program in design point of view, as a what compiler has to do, if you want to use minimum number of variables, if a compiler want to optimize your code, which variables are unnecessarily used, or whatever, if you want to replace that variable by new variable, where are the program points that value will affect your code. So for that particular analysis, these things are required: precondition, invariant, postcondition, etc. Let's take one example of linear search. So what is meaning of linear search? Suppose I have an array of 10 numbers, and I want to search a particular number from that array. So what will be the logic? If I have any numbers in any particular order, and I want to search a number. For example, now current, how many students are there? 60 students are there, and I want to search roll number 14 randomly. You're sitting in a class randomly. I want to search roll number 14. So how should I go about? What should be the logic? It's a linear search. Proceed by examining all elements until either X is found or no element remain to be examined. So you will start from first number and check whether it is matching with roll number 14. No, then increment that. Check next number. It is 7. It is not matching with 14. Again next. Till you get that number, or you end with the list. That number may be absent. You're getting the, when the number is found, you have to return its position. Otherwise, if number is not there, you have to say that the number is not found. So this is the logic for linear search. You are searching one element at a time. So invariants can be described data structure, a table organized around invariants. So we'll talk about invariants. It is like a data structure. So what is the approach to implement linear search? So first thing is you need a loop. You can go with for loop or while loop. If you know how many what are numbers are there, total numbers, then you can go with for loop. If the numbers are unknown, you didn't know what are the total number of students available in your class, then you can go with the while loop. So while elements remain to be examined, do begin. Then if this element is X, then return its position, else not found, return 0. So this is what is known as logic. We just write a logic on a paper. If we'll search number one by one, and if we get that number, we have to return its position, that is index, and if number is not found, we have to print number is not there and return 0. So it is the post condition after the search. X is an element of A of I. We assume that we have an array of numbers A of I, and X is a number, any number from I 0 to N. If total number of elements are N, I will start from 0, will increment till it is equal to less than equal to N. X is not in A I plus 1 to N. So when you get X, or X is present at particular position, it may not present after I plus 1th position. The condition for staying within a loop. So when you come out of the loop, you already got X, that is you found that number and it is not present in further array. If number is found, suppose you have array of size 10, you found that number at 8th position, you will not check for 9th and 10th position, right? You will just return it even if there are duplicate elements, repeated elements are available, but you are searching for the first occurrence of that element. So if that element is found at particular position, you are not going to search next position till the end of the array. That is post condition. And what is the condition for staying in a loop? Till X is not equal to A of I. The X is the number user want to search, A of I is array. Until that X value of X is not present in an array, you will in a loop. As soon as you got X is equal to A of I, you will come out of the loop. So this is what we can say a final developed program fragment. We assume that X is equal to A of 0 and I is equal to N. And while X is not equal to A of I, do I minus 1. We started from last position and we are taking for 10, 9th, 8th, 7th, etc. and return I. As soon as you found value of I, you will return it. This is do while loop. Sorry, while loop. If you want to improve this code, this is a linear search. Your checking each and every element. If the numbers are 10 or 15 or 20, it's easy. But if the numbers are 1000, 10,000, 20,000, and you want to search a particular number from the list of 20,000, suppose there is a what we can say phone directory of 50,000 numbers, telephone directory, and you want to search a particular number. So is it feasible? Is it efficient to search one by one? So instead of that, if you want to improve your logic, you can go for what is called as binary search. So what is binary search? I have to assume that your array is sorted array, and uh, the element you want to search, you will first check whether it is, first you will find out middle element, you will compare the number you want to search with the middle element. If it is present, return its position. Otherwise, you will check whether the number is less than that mid element or greater than mid element. If it is less than, you will search left side of your array, otherwise right hand side of the array. Assume that array is sorted ascending order. So immediately you are reducing your search area. Instead of searching all 20,000 elements, you will search for 10,000, then 5,000, then 2,500, etc. In each and every iteration, you will reduce your search numbers. That is called binary search. But here, we assumption is array is sorted, or the numbers are sorted. So this is the logic for or program for binary sort. First and last is the position of array. While first is less than equal to last, which is terminating condition, we'll find out middle element, first plus last divided by 2. And if the number you want to search, that is t, is equal to x of middle, x is your array. If you found it written middle, that means you are retaining that position. If it is less than middle, then your last will change, middle minus 1. If the number is greater than x, your first will change, which is middle minus or plus 1, else not found. Let me explain you this. If I want to search number 5, this is my x, t is equal to 5. First is 0 position, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Last is my fourth position. So what is middle? Middle position, first plus last divided by 2. 0 plus 4 divided by 2. So, 2 is my middle position, is equal to middle. Then what we have to search? If t, that is 5,
Ma'am,
yes,
can you take one example for odd numbers? Like one more five numbers.
these are odd numbers. Okay.
No, ma'am. Total number of elements should be odd. Like here we are getting two because there are four.
So there are 5 numbers.
So if ma'am there are six numbers, then what will be the middle?
Yeah, if there are 6 numbers, we just add one more. So here instead of 4, it will be 5. So we'll take 2. Middle is 2, not 2.5. We'll go with this 2. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
This middle number, and we'll compare x of middle with t. So 5 is not equal to 9. So first condition is false. So this condition is not true. So what we have to check, whether this t is less than x of middle. So 5 is less than 9, right? So first will remain same, and will change last, that is middle minus 1. Middle is 2, so this is middle minus 1. This is my last now. If my number is 17, Then this was last. First will change middle plus 1. This is middle. If your number lies between, if it is equal to middle, then you have to return its position. If it is less than middle, you will change your last. If it is greater than middle, this will be your first. Middle plus 1. You will search in this array. Otherwise, you will search in this array. So now 0 plus 1 divided by 2, first plus last. 0 plus 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. This will take it as 0 only. And this is your next middle. Middle is equal to number, so we will return its position. If you want to search this number 17, then first plus last, that is 3 plus 5, 8, divided by 2. The middle number is 4, 15, which is not matching with yours 3. 3 is suppose 17. So middle plus 1, that means 5. And you will return this number because this is now matching with the middle. So if you check this, it will return every iteration, it will make your search half. Instead of searching all numbers one by one, binary search reduces the search elements, but provided that the number is or array is sorted. And when we are doing with search, we are finding out only one occurrence of that number. First occurrence. So we have seen how control flows in Pascal, that is do while loop. We have seen this grammar, control flow grammar for Pascal, DNF rules, if statement, if then else statement, while statement, repeat until statement, for and case with Pascal syntax. Same type of loops are available or control structures are available in C language. I have given you the examples from C only. In Pascal, we have if expression then statement. In C language, we didn't have then keyword. It has a if, opening bracket, expression, closing bracket, and statement. Then if expression then S1 else S2. Here if expression in a bracket S1 else S2. Else is there. While expression statement, here while expression do statement. That is the difference. In Pascal, colon equal to is assignment statement. In C, equal to is assignment statement. Equal to and not equal to, these are equalizing. You are checking whether the value is equal to. When I want to compare x is equal to y, I have to choose this operator. And if I choose x equal to y, that means value of y will get assigned to x. Sometimes it can also cause an error. Instead of equal to, if you choose equal to, it will return true or false. And equal to will assign value of right hand side to left hand side variable. And this is not equal to, it will also return true or false. Assignments within expression. So right hand side of the assignment statement is called expression, that I explained you. And the complete statement is called assignment statement. So C is equal to get char appears as a sub expression within a larger expression. So C is equal to get char not equal to end of the file. So you are accepting a character from the user, and if that character is not equal to end of the file, then you will enter into the loop. So this is the complete expression. The value of this expression is true or false. And if it is true, you will enter into the loop, otherwise you will not. But this expression has two sub-expressions. One more sub-expression, C is equal to get char. This is assignment statement. So we first ask user to enter a character, put that character, assign that character to C, and compare that C with end of the file character. For loop in C, we can have for loop for indefinite iterations. It is not compulsory that I should always have a terminating condition less than equal to 0. The empty expressions, you can write a for loop like for semicolon semicolon without specifying any condition. It is called forever loop. An empty test expression is assumed to be true and can be read as forever. The expression E1, E2, E3 are optional for in a for loop. You can try for loop without giving initialization condition, without giving increment condition, without giving terminating condition. So this can be an infinite loop. Or you can give break statement in between to come out of the loop. This is again example for break and continue statement. So if I want to use a for loop without initialization, without checking for a condition, I'm just accepting a character. If character is space or tab character, continue. It will not end. It will continue again and accept a character from user. But if the character is new line character or enter, when you press enter, it is a new line character, you will come out of the loop. Otherwise, it will count number of lines. So if you write this code and check at the end, it will print number of lines without space and tab. Even if you give space tab, it will not count. But for /n, it will come out of it. To summarize unit number 1, it was a big unit. We need 7 lectures to conclude this unit. We have seen what is the role of programming language. This part was, you can call it as a revision from FPL unit number 1. We have seen what is a language, what are the characteristics of language, then generations of programming language, what are different programming language paradigms, what are the examples of programming language paradigms, etc. That was the role of programming language. Then we started with language description, which is syntactic structure. Note that when you write a program, it is called source code. We need a translator which converts your source program, that is high level program, into machine language. And this translation from high level language to machine level language is not one by one. It happens in phases or stages in by a compiler. This is called different types: lexical analysis, syntax analysis, semantic analysis. It goes through number of phases, and at the end you get a machine code. So we have seen two phases of this translation. One is lexical analysis, where your program is replaced by the tokens, that is the words in a language. And then the language has provided with a grammar like BNF or CFG, context-free grammar. And we have to check whether your program is syntactically correct or not with the help of these grammars. And we have seen what is abstract syntax tree, then parse tree, leftmost derivation, rightmost derivation, and top-down and bottom-up parsing. Then we talked about structured programming, imperative programming, statements, different types of statements, how to write a grammar, how to check whether how control flows from this grammar, and how it gets translated by a compiler with the help of grammar. And we talked about different types of statements, special cases like break, continue, and how to convert your logic to a program with the help of programming language constructs. Wait a minute. I want to show you compiler phases, and then I'm going to conduct a quiz. Any queries about unit number 1? This is just for more information. So your high-level language program is converted to machine code by a compiler in various phases. First phase is lexical analysis, then syntax analysis, intermediate code generation, code optimization, and code generation. And in every stage, some information is stored in symbol table or it is referred from a symbol table. And errors are handled in various phases. Some errors are lexical errors, syntax errors, semantic errors, etc. So, for example, what happens in lexical analysis, which is called scanning. Scanning identify lexical units of a source code, which are called tokens or terminal symbols, constants, reserved words, etc. And these are stored in a tables, which are called symbol table. For example, if the statement is x is equal to y plus 10, it's a simple assignment statement. So X is identifier, this equal to is assignment operator, Y is identifier, plus is operator, addition operator, and 10 is number. So it identifies that X is identifier equal to operator, Y identifier, 10 number plus operator. And then you have a grammar in this language. These are called tokens or terminal symbols in your grammar. So next phase is syntax analysis. In syntax analysis, we have tokens which are obtained from first stage, that is lexical analysis, and it will arrange these tokens in the abstract syntax tree. A plus B, then star C. In semantic analysis, you will check whether this is possible. Can you add A plus B? The type of A is matching with type of B. This operation is allowed. Are they if A is of type character and B is of type float, it is not allowed. It will syntactically correct A plus B, but semantically it is not correct. Then it will throw an error at this stage, semantic analysis. Otherwise, it will carry out this operation. Here, you will check with the help of semantic, whether the result should be in float, integer, or what. And then intermediate code generation. Intermediate code generation will convert it each stage of this abstract syntax tree is converted into intermediate code, or which is called as 3 address code. A plus B, you will save it in T1, which is temporary uh, variable created by a system. We are not able to see those variables. These are used by a system. Suppose this is total is equal to count plus rate into 5. So count, suppose rate is of float. So first convert this 5, which is integer, into float. This is again done by the system. User has just entered this statement, and system will carry out these operations internally. Rate into 5 in T1, T2, T3. These are temporary variables created by a system. Code optimization, no need to use T3 here. You can directly use total equal to count plus T2. So such things which are automatically generated by the intermediate code generator will eliminate intermediate phases and make the program more efficient. And then this code, intermediate code, is translated into target code or machine language. So all these stages happen sequentially by a compiler. So in our chapter number 1, we have seen what is lexical analysis and syntax analysis. Syntax analysis is also known as parsing. Lexical analysis is known as scanning. So I think this is enough. I'll send you a quiz. You have to appear for this quiz. Quiz is for 10 minutes as a revision for chapter number 1.